Hello and welcome to the MyClayCo studio. My name is Carla and today we are going to be making some bookshelf earrings. Now, if you've been around the channel for a while, you know that I love anything bookish and book earrings are some of my favorite. So I'm really excited to get into today. We'll make some cute little bookshelves and I'll show you how to adorn them with a heap of really nice little micro detailings. Let's get into it. To build a bookshelf, you will obviously need your clay. I've picked Sculpey Premo Raw Sienna for this one because I want it to kind of have a walnut look. I'm also going to be using a bookshelf cutter. Now you don't have to use a bookshelf cutter if you don't want to. I have also built bookshelf earrings by just cutting out, say, an arch shape and then using a flat-ended extruder head to actually extrude out a long flat strip, and then I've just wound it around the outside and then put a shelf on it. So you can build it that way as well. I am going to be using the cutter just for the ease of it, and this is our soft arabesque bookshelf cutter. Now what I will say with working with cutters is they have this flat area with any bookshelf cutters that you're going to be doing. So this flat area actually makes it very prone to sticking to your clay. So generally, I don't like using release agents. I'll do the multi-cut method. With this one, with a large stamp though, I will use a release agent, and I'm actually going to use water because I'm going to put a water transfer onto this. I really like our walnut wood grain texture with the bookshelves because it does give that kind of wood effect on it. And it also means that once I've put it on, I can then leave a lot of the water on there and it'll help me when I'm stamping out my piece to make sure that it's releasing. Now for this one, I have actually rolled the clay out slightly thinner than what I want it to be. So it's 2 millimeters in thickness. And that is because when I actually stamp with my cutter, it's going to stamp in, and because it has these large kind of flat areas in it, it's actually going to push clay out and raise up those edges that we've got around here and the shelf part. So because it's 2 millimeters in thickness, when I put the cutter on it, it will actually kind of squish the clay up to maybe around 2.5 millimeters in thickness. So I generally go a little bit thinner than what I want my final product to be when using one of these kind of large stamp cutters. But first things first, I've got to chop my water transfer and just pop that one on. So I have that one cut now so that it will match up with my clay piece. And as I said, this is an optional step. You don't have to put a water transfer on to make bookshelf earrings. I just really like the wood grain on it. You could actually cut out your piece or create your piece if you're hand cutting it. And then you could actually use another tool to texture it so it has a textured wood grain effect. I think that would also be really cool, or you could just leave it as is. So I have been trialing a couple of things with transfers and making them as clean as possible. So I have found that with ours especially, you can see this water dome that I've got on the top here. I find that when I'm actually taking it off, if I use a baby wipe to soak up that water, I can then remove my piece of paper really nice and easily and cleanly. And you can see here, now that I've taken it off, little paper fibers. So if you were to leave these on when you bake it, once you put a glaze on it or anything like that, it will actually, I guess, dull those so you won't be able to see them as well. But I have found, again, the magic of baby wipes. With water transfers, moisture is your friend. You actually want to, if I was to rub this dry with my finger, I might smudge the ink. Whereas if I was to actually wet my baby wipe, so it's quite hydrated, and then roll over the top of it, I can actually take those little fibers off very easily. So you can see now I've got that really nice wood grain transfer on there, and I don't have any of those little paper fiber bits. So I'm actually going to keep a bit of the water on here because I'm going to stamp out with my cutter, and I want to make sure that it's not going to stick to my clay because of these bigger stamp areas. So I'm also actually going to just dip my cutter in water. And as you can see with that one now, I've got a really nice indent level with that. So even though my clay was a bit thinner, you see how it's slightly raised up now from the initial clay when I squish it because of that stamp that it has in it. So that's just a little tip that I have learned while I've been using these cutters. And now all I do is I just take one of my wipes and I just dab that water away, and then I peel off my excess clay. It's now at this point that we have a couple of different baking options. We can either bake this one and then bake all of the pieces that we're going to be putting on it so that it's baked clay on baked clay, and using an adhesive such as a Cernit glue or a Sculpey bacon bond, or we can leave this raw and put baked pieces on it, or leave it raw and put raw clay pieces on it. I like to use a baked base because that way I'm not going to accidentally poke my bookshelves or anything like that and accidentally indent it while I'm working with it. So I am actually going to put these in for a bake, and then we can work with a nice flat solid surface just with some Cernit glue or bacon bond on that. Okay, while those shelves are baking, let's talk add-ons. So this is actually not put together, they're all just loose pieces that I've put on, but I've just put on some books, a couple of plants. What I will say is anything that you want to remain rigid, I generally bake first before putting it on. So books, for example, if I'm trying to add them on raw, then they can kind of bend and warp a little bit. So I do like to bake them first. So I'm having my baked shelf because I want that to stay rigid. I'm having my baked books, and generally pots as well I tend to bake. Then my greenery, which I want to be a little bit more organic, I tend to leave raw, and I do that in the final bake at the very end. So, and you can see as well, it would be really difficult if I pre-baked this greenery here and tried to overlap it and sit it nicely on these kind of raised bits, because it would be a flat baked piece and it would sit a bit funny. So general rule, whatever you want to be rigid, you want to bake before placing, and then anything that you want to remain organic, like cats, if you want a little cat on there, or plants, you want to do those as the final bake. The great thing about that too is that if you're having a bit of a creative block and you have, say, an afternoon or an evening free, I've just actually done these the other day. I had an hour, so I just stamped out a bunch of these, baked them, and then I put some little paint detailing on them so that I can actually scrape these off, pop them in a container, and anytime I build a bookshelf, I already have a stack of books in a range of different colors that I can draw from. So the way that I created all of these little books here was actually with our bookshelf micro cutter set. So this one actually comes with 3 different shapes and sized books. So that's what I used to create these. We also have a couple of different pots that we can use, and also it does come with a little cat. So I may even add a cat to this one because I think that would be really cute. But if you didn't have micro cutters, you could, especially for the books, you can actually use a tissue blade and systematically slice. You just want to make sure that you're getting some variation in your book sizes, just so that you're not having all of the same size books, because it won't be as visually appealing as having a bit of variation. And as for things like little pots, you can either try and make them yourself, hand carve them, whatever you find that is most helpful. But yeah, I'm going to be using these ones today just for the ease of it, but you can definitely hand cut all of this yourself. So I actually think in terms of design for this one, this is an extra piece that I have, not the ones that we currently have baking. But what I'm thinking I might do is, I really like this kind of squat pot. I think it is really cute. So I'm going to put one of these probably up in that corner, and then I will put a cat in this bottom corner just so that the little tail can swing off to the side. So I want to be baking these ones first because I want them to remain rigid. So I am actually going to bake 2, so I have one for each of my earrings, and I will leave the cat for when I do the organics with the leaves, so that I can kind of place that and move its tail around wherever I need it on my bookshelf. Okay, I've got my pieces out of the oven, and I just want to make sure that I'm now doing my organic things. So I'm going to cut out my cats, which I found this scrap. It's kind of like speckly white, which I think will look cute for the kitties. To put anything on these, because it is unbaked clay, I would need to put some kind of glue. So you can either use a Cernit glue or an oven baked clay adhesive like Bacon Bond from Sculpey. I actually think that this one is sometimes a little bit too sticky and it pulls away, so I actually find the Cernit glue a little bit easier to use. And it's got a really fine nib at the top. So I just put a little bit down here and then apply it with a paintbrush. Now I already know that I'm going to be putting something up in the top corner, something in the bottom corner, and then I generally will have, say, book stacks there and maybe around here. And just want to do that on both sides. Now, even though it is white here, it does bake completely transparent, so we don't have to worry too much if we haven't got it in the perfect spot. But what we do next is we want to try and get all of our pieces on. So I generally start with my organic pieces on here because their placement I can put on, and then I can kind of work the books in around that. So I get my cat. Super cute. And what I'm going to do is, it's completely up to you with placement of things on your bookshelves. I like to either have completely random, so mismatched bookshelves, or I like to have the same elements but just in slightly different locations. So I'm going to put a cat up in this top corner and then a cat in that bottom corner. So I put one in there. And you can see here, if this was pre-baked and it was flat, this tail wouldn't be able to sit nicely up the top there. Just going to pick up our other cat. I'm going to make sure if you've used a cutter, you want to smooth any of the edges. And I want to put him down here. So just going to squish those tails down a bit just so that they sit nicely on my bookshelves. Okay, so that's my cats placed. Next, I'm going to put in my pots. So I've got my pots, and I'm just going to show you this super handy tool. So this is called a pickup pen. It's kind of got like a wax cone on one end, which isn't sticky, but when you apply a bit of pressure to baked polymer clay, it does actually like kind of tack onto this end. And then you also have an end here, which is, it does have like an indent in it. Say if you were putting caviar beads in that are rounded, it means that you can press them in, but it also means that we can use it almost like a needle tool. And when we've put things in, we can flip it over and kind of shift them to where we want. So it's a super versatile tool to have. So I'm going to move my pots off of the tile because it has a shiny back because we baked it on the tile, which means that if I try and do it on the gloss, it might actually stick to that. So I just shift it to the side. And you can see that when I press in, it'll pick it up. And then I could just put it opposite to where my cat is, because these are kind of like your key features that will be surrounded by books. So we're just going to put the other one on. Now I may need to put a little bit more clay adhesive up in this area when I put my organics up the top, but I'm actually going to do that one last, and I'm just going to quickly pop my books in. Now with your book selection, I'll generally put things onto my baked piece of clay, but I won't actually put any clay adhesive down, and I just want to kind of have a look how colors work together, whether I should have the books laying flat or stacked, or if I should put books all around. I just kind of move my pieces around until I'm pretty happy with how they are, and then I know that when I put them down onto my clay adhesive that I've got them in the right spot for what my piece wants to look like. So the last thing I'm going to do is add in my remaining organics, which are the leaves that are going to sit in these little pots. So I'm just going to quickly burnish that one to the tile. And I'm actually going to be using, this is one of our micro flower cutters, but I'm just going to edit it when putting it in my pot. We do have Botanics range of cutters too, but I'm feeling this one today. And I just wanted to show you how you can edit shapes that you kind of already have to suit your bookshelves. So first thing I'm going to do is actually just apply a little more of this up above the pots, just so that we know that our clay is going to be sticking. Okay, then to edit these, I actually really like these as if they were leaves. So I'm just going to use my craft blade, and I'm actually just going to cut this little bottom section out and remove it, because then this is going to be kind of like a little spiky plant. And now we've got some kind of like little succulent pieces. So if I pull that up, almost like a star. So if you had a star shape, you could also do this. I'm just going to elongate those bottom ones just so it's a little bit less of a star, so that when I put it on, I want those bottom pieces to sit above my pot. This is why it's easier to do your organics with unbaked clay, because then you can kind of move the leaves around where you want them and layer them around your other pieces. And I'm just putting some light detailing on these leaves so it's a little bit kind of either fern-like, or it could be like a spiky succulent. Alrighty, so those ones are all good now, and we can pop them back in the oven. And there we have our finished bookshelf earrings. They look absolutely adorable, and I'm so excited to add them to my collection of bookish earrings. I hope that you enjoyed the video today and that you found it helpful. If you did have any questions about anything in the video today, just pop a comment down below. And of course, please like and subscribe, as it does help the channel, and we will see you next time.